nowadays, they're not seeing a difference between what's digital and what's not digital. And I dislike the word digital because there's quite a lot of connotations around it. A lot of people take it as being like this weird beast they have to conquer. And for me, it's all to do with interaction. So if you have to put an ad on a newspaper or on the phone, you have to explore the power of that medium to achieve what you're trying to do. And I think, the telephone being such an intimate relationship with the user, you just have to kind of take advantage of that, really.
Just on that, I think basically, the legacy of mobile in the last decade, it's been creative-led. So there were lots of inventors and mobile specialist agencies 9 years ago that aren't around today, and approaching brands saying, we've invented something, satellite thing, and you have to do it because everyone's got a phone. And the brands say, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And they go to their core agencies, the creative agencies, who kind of sat on their hands for a long time. And the reason being is because, you can't just be technology-led. You need to be creative-led, and mobile's coming that way. Creatives basically understand the consumer or people or whatever from insights, from planners. And when you understand people, then really any new technology is just a plus. And I think, finally we're seeing, especially in the last couple of years, that shift has happened. So, which is really cool.
I'm going to open this up now for people to ask questions. Yes, I'm looking that way, gentleman in front. I'm just going to repeat that question so that everybody heard it, but it's actually, I've written at the top here, data issues. He says, looking towards Steve and Orange. So the issue here is to what extent are we going to be restricted simply by the bandwidth? Somebody from O2, I believe, said that one video download could use as much bandwidth as 500,000 text messages sent simultaneously. So what kind of barrier is that going to be to your cloud? Cloud computing? I
think it's interesting, yeah. I mean, you may see a change when this kind of thing... At the moment, Google Maps is fabulous and the rest of it, but when these kind of problems become more severe, who knows what we're going to see. They might start charging again for data, which wouldn't be very nice. Or you might see, from our perspective, we might get more creative, and we might make very small apps that you download to your phone that work locally and don't use any data at all. And certainly, when we make Java apps for all phones except iPhone and work on like 70% of phones, we try and make sure they're under 500 kilobytes, which is really small, and that means that they'll work on most phones. I know for a fact that networks are looking really heavily at this at the moment, and there are lots of ways of increasing capacity. There's all kinds of different things that they're looking at, and it's certainly number one on their agenda, whereas mobile advertising isn't. So, it's a really tough question. I mean, AT&T, apparently struggled in the States when the iPhone is the most popular phone in the States now. But it's a challenge for the operators, and if they meet demand, then they'll reap the benefits.
And 4G, of course, is
yeah, it is. Yeah.
But so just to reiterate, is there a creative solution to the problem of bandwidth?
Yeah, there's a creative solution to any problem.
Absolutely.
Creativity, and I'm not saying creativity in terms of what creatives sit and do, but creativity is definition a problem-solving process. So, if we have problems with the technology, the truth is that this is in its infancy, and until the iPhone, nobody really understood that there was going to be limitations on this bandwidth because nobody used it. But human endeavour is filled with times that we've looked like we're on the brink of a collapse, and invention and creativity has created a solution to it. So I think it's probably a little early to be too worried about that sort of thing. There's always creative solutions, but I think we need to see that there's a problem first.
Yeah. So you're going to worry about it when it happens.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
And I think, though, to do a proper mobile campaign, you shouldn't just try to do like one size fits all. I think most great websites can recognize which device it's being accessed by and what type of connection, so you can deliver different types of content relative to the bandwidth and the phone that they have. So you can really deliver the great, very deep emerging experiences through an iPhone, but then to a very old maybe Nokia phone or something, you deliver maybe just a text SMS type based experience. So. And I think if you just focused on the high end, you're going to miss out on many emerging markets and many other people don't have the iPhone. So yeah, I would say tier your campaigns.
I mean, actually, I love these kind of problems just because it pushes the boundaries of creativity. And I see it no different from, for example, doing a piece of rich media advertising where you can't have a 1 minute video, for example. So the same applies to the telephone. You know, you have to be considered on how you deliver that idea. But obviously, it'd be great to have a 2 meg video playing on your phone. But until that happens, you know, we're going to be happy just coming up with solutions, really.
I just say that the bottom line is, you know, there's this funny thing about, I kind of call it the Ferrari effect, where expectations actually aren't in proportion to the growth of something which is available to you. So if you buy a Ferrari for the first time, if someone hasn't got a Ferrari, you get in it and you kind of notice it hasn't got a radio, and you're like, oh, it's rubbish. It doesn't have a radio. And it seems just because mobile can do A, B, C, and D, you know, it can pinpoint your location and this and that and the other. You know, it's very, very easy to expect it to do all of that. But TV and radio and everything just doesn't do any of that, and we don't expect it to do that. And I think the bottom line is that right now, if you do it properly, you know, as a brand, it's not price prohibitive, and the ROI is fabulous because, you know, for X amount of money, you can get X amount of interactions with Y result, and you know, it's fine. So I just wanted to say that. I don't want to evangelise mobile, but that's the truth of it.
Stephen.
From a creative's point of view, do you think, one, that the networks, the owners of the network, do you think they understand the potential, as you're discussing, is enough? Do you think there are enough people working within the networks who really get what you're talking about and therefore they can see the scale? I'm not so much talking about the 3G waiting for 4G issue, it's more about, are there people like you working in the networks, or is that something that has to also evolve? Because when I look at the boards and senior management, I'm sure
There's another Stephen sitting behind you who's putting his hand up. This is Steve from Orange, for those who don't know. He's probably going to give you a better answer to the questions.
Well, I really want to creatives.
Okay.
Probably might be a different answer, but you know, I'm looking at the boards of the main mobile companies, and they're not like the boards of broadcast companies or other sort of creative platforms. So.
Okay, Steve, I'll let you come back on that, Steve, at the end. Okay. Sorry.
Do you want me to answer that? I think networks, I don't know, this might not be right, but I think that they're going to evolve into two different things, two types of networks. One are going to be in the business of data and connections and all of that great stuff, and the other networks are going to be basically evolve into service providers, which is like ITV, you know, become media owners and channels. And I think, you know, around the boardroom table at the networks at the moment, and I might not be right, you've probably got a guy on the end with a £5 billion, you know, calls check, and another guy with a £2 billion SMS check, and there's some guy on the end with a £5 million mobile advertising going, oh, you know, this is the future. And I think, you know, it's still very new, and the data problem is number one priority. But I think you're going to see an evolution. At the same time, there'll be an evolution of consumers as well. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
I think that's pretty apt. So just going, but from your perspective, where do you see it going?
It's very hard for me to comment on sort of the internals of another organisation. I think it'd probably be a bit unfair of me to do that. I think from an external point of view, the mobile companies certainly seem to understand the potential of the medium and are working quite hard to set the agenda within their own particular thing. But it would be pretty hard for me to sort of say more than that.
Well, let me rephrase the question slightly for the last two, which is to what extent are the mobile operators going to become the media owners of the future?
Okay. It's a good question. You know, I think a lot of this is going to depend on the type of mobile apps and creative that is put forth, you know, and how the consumer sees it. If they see it as a nuisance, then I don't think they're going to create demand for greater bandwidth and whatnot. And therefore, I don't think that it will have a lot of pressure to these other organizations to change. So I do think that we need to find ways to make, you know, utility out of our creative so that it does actually is useful from the consumer's perspective, which I think then will change which networks they pick and whatnot, which will then eventually change the system.
I mean, I think the networks are already kind of media owners, really, and they're kind of the gatekeepers for us to achieve what we're trying to do. I mean, if you compare to other markets like Japan, I'd love to have that kind of flexibility in terms how we're able to kind of output creatives. But if you compare to European markets, the UK is very, very mature. And, you know, I think going forward, you know,